Come on and work. What is going on here? All right. Hey, good evening. My Wi-Fi went out. It's like I have like these dead spots in my garage. I really should get a new booster thing. Like I've got one plugged into the wall, but I can't get it to work with the new Wi-Fi. It uses the copper in your house to transmit the signal, and I haven't gotten it to work very well, so I'll have to buy another one. But I just want to do an update on the resin, which ended up being a sort of failure, sort of success. It did leak. I'm gonna have to add a little bit more resin to finish the fill and then cut it up. Um, so yeah, here it is right now. This is what it looks like. So you can see I lost about a 1/4 inch or so in this one pocket here, and it dripped all the way down here and onto the CNC tape a little bit. If I mix up some more resin, I can fill that with like a clear and overfill a little bit just in some of the areas. Well, I might be able to get that tape off relatively clean. We'll see. I was really hoping it wasn't going to leak, but it did. It seeped down. There's a seam in the back that I was a little worried about, but was unsure whether that was going to leak, and it did. Yeah, it does look pretty cool. Like I like the finished effect, especially once I get this tape off and see what the side's gonna. The side it's all open right here down the edge, so it's gonna look pretty cool. And when I cut it up into pieces, like it'll make some pretty cool candle holders. I'm just a little upset that it leaked, but that happens, and I thought it might happen, and well, it did. I probably should have taken additional precautions, put it in a plastic bucket or something that other people had recommended, or I was going to try. But I thought, nah, it should be fine, and then it wasn't. What's it going to be? It's going to be so I got this big block, and I don't have a lathe. Otherwise, I would cut it into smaller chunks and make pen blanks out of it. So what I figured I'd do is I just cut it into about inch to inch and a half inch chunks and make candle holders out of it. Yeah, exactly. If I think it might happen, I'm going to make it happen by thinking it, right? But it's fine. Like it didn't really do. This is what it took off of my spoil board, but there's a reason why it's a sacrificial surface. Not so much for resin, but because stuff happens, and I need to build a new spoil board soon anyway. That's something I'll do sometime in the next couple weeks. I'd really like to refinish that and not pay $100 and some odd for a spoil board. But yeah, I just want to do an update on that. Maybe chat a little bit about the last couple days because it was crazy doing this band thing. We had 43 bands in 2 days, I think, that we hosted. On Tuesday, my son and I, we got there at 7:30 in the morning. We didn't get home till 11:15 that night. And then yesterday we got there right around 8 o'clock, and we got home at 10:15 last night. After all was said and done, I met some really cool kids. I met some really cool band directors, and I had some awesome kids working with me. Shout out to Luke and Dawson and my boy. I was really proud of the work that he did. He pulled double duty doing the job he was assigned to do perfectly. And in between what he had to do, he jumped out to help us with the stage, being stage crew on the side. But the stage kids I had, Luke and Dawson, I mean, all of them were great, but they went above and beyond. We had this one band, it was probably 50 or so students. And what we had to do was, between each band, I had a binder that had a setup that each band wanted. So, this band would want 4 rows, and they wanted so many kids per row, plus the percussion setup. So we usually had about 15 minutes between bands to set up. And regardless of the crew I had, we usually knocked it out in about 7 or 8 minutes. And then had plenty of time for the percussion to come in, finish setting up their stuff, getting it just the way they wanted. The band would come in with a couple minutes before they performed, and they would go ahead and perform from warm-up. But we got a little behind because one of the bands was late getting there, and they wanted their full warm-up time. So that set us back by about 12 to 15 minutes. And we were trying to... Still nothing received. Oh, you know why? Because I found it. I will send that out tomorrow. It's sitting in the backseat of my car. So I will get that sent out tomorrow. I've printed out the label for it and everything. I don't know why I didn't box it. I thought I did. So I will get that sent out tomorrow. I've got a pile of random crap in my car, including this giant log, and it's with all that stuff. I apologize, but I'll get that out to you. So normally we'd have about 15 minutes between bands. And one of the bands that showed up, the band director is close with our band director who was running the show, and found out we were a little bit behind, and we'd only been behind for a couple of bands. But he said, you know what, we're ready to go. We'll do a quick warm up. We'll jump on stage early, and he got us back on track. But we had literally about 4 minutes from a band of about 50 kids to knock it down to about 30. So we had to rearrange. We had to delete a whole row, rearrange the first 3 rows, plus get the percussion set. And we did it in about 3 minutes with my son, these two other boys. I couldn't believe how quickly they were. I mean, boom, boom, boom. It was just like, I called it out, like row 1 is 8 and row 2 is this, and they were boom, boom, they throwing stuff out into the wings backstage, and got the percussion set up just right. And I think they were maybe a minute late getting, like, actually with their start time, which doesn't hurt them in their score, thankfully. But we were able to get back on track. So those kids knocked it out, and they were awesome. But yeah, met some really interesting people in the whole process. This one kid, I can't remember his name because I'm terrible with names, but he showed. I was setting up the percussion, and I was over by the timpani, and he was at the timpani, and he comes up to me, puts out his hand, he's like, "Hi, my name." I want to say his name was Abe, but I don't think that's right. Being on stage, there was a lot going on. I couldn't really hear him very well. He goes, what's your name? I said, my name's Liam. He goes, oh, nice to meet you, Mr. Liam. He goes, can you help me? I said, yeah, what do you need? He said, I'm really nervous. Can you help me not be nervous? I said, I'll do my best. What's going on? So he said, I've never played the timpani. I just got the music today. Our old timpani player, they quit or something. Something had happened to the person who was supposed to play timpani for this one piece. I said, okay, no problem. I said, what do you normally play? He said, I play a xylophone, and in marching band, I play the quads. I said, okay, well, you're used to 4 drums then, so that's good. And you can read music, so that's good. I said, why don't you go ahead and practice? You got your music right there. Go ahead and practice it. I can do that? I said, I think so. I called the band director up on the radio. He said, yeah, he can do that. Just don't use the sticks. Just lightly tap on the drums. I said, okay, cool. So I told him that. And then he goes, can we move? Are we allowed to move the drums? Because where the stand's at, there's a shadow and I can't really see the music that well. I said, yeah, no problems. I moved that for him. I said, you know what? The biggest thing about being on stage and being in front of people, I said, is not to show on your face if you make a mistake, because people are going to look right at you when that happens. As long as you just play your music, even if you make a mistake, just roll on to the next measure, because there's nothing you can do about the past. You can just make the next measure better. I said, you'll be just fine. Just don't show it on your face. He said, okay. And so we got the band set up, and I went out to the backstage on that side, on stage left, and he didn't know I was there, but I was basically standing right behind him. I'm watching him, and man, this kid, he knocked it out. I mean, I'm not a musician. Shoot, I was just banging on the drums, playing a really easy song and screwing it up myself before I went live. But I couldn't tell that he'd never played the music before. Kid was awesome. And so after his performance, after the band performed, before they went out to the sight reading room, I went up to him. I shook his hand. I said, "Man, that was awesome. That was really, really well done." And I couldn't tell that you had never played before. He goes, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." So it was pretty awesome to. Yeah, it was just this random thing. This kid comes up to me like, "Oh, can you help me?" I'm like, "Sure, I'll do my best." And then, funny, there was earlier in the day, we had this band come on who had a blind student. So I had seen this girl walk in because it was during our lunch break. I was sitting in my car listening to a podcast, just kind of chilling out. Because man, each day I walked over 7 miles, and that's just going back and forth on the stage and setting up and everything else. So man, my legs were so tired. I'm like, oh, I need to sit down for a minute. So during the dinner break, I sat down in my car, saw this band pull up, and there was a student wearing the band jacket and had the cane, and or the whatever you call it there for the blind. I was like, that's interesting. Okay, cool. And then when the band came on, I saw her come on. She had her clarinet in one hand and the thing in the other hand. And I watched her sit down, because I stayed on stage to make sure that the kids could get their music stands adjusted right. They were kind of funky and not what most of them were used to. So I saw her kind of fumbling with the cane, trying to break it apart. So I went up to her. I said, "Would you like me to hold your instrument?" She says, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, cool." I held on to that while she put her, disassembled her cane, put it on the floor. I gave it back to her. I said, "Okay, awesome. Have a great performance." And so then I went backstage. They performed. Then I went out there to help her get off the stage, because she was off to stage right, and there was maybe 3 feet until the steps to get off stage. I didn't want her to fall off stage. I didn't know how that row was going to disembark. So, but they decided to walk through the chairs. I'm like, oh, geez, there's no room. So I kind of like cleared a path in front of her, so they could get off stage and helped her get to the next area. Well, then I'm setting up the next band a couple minutes later, and the band director comes from backstage with her and the girl that was helping her. I go, "Is something wrong?" And the band director goes, "She's blind. The next thing is sight reading. She can't do sight reading. She's blind." I'm like, oh my God. I felt so bad. I'm like, I didn't even think about that. I was just thinking like, get the band to the next area. So it was kind of funny. But yeah, it was really, really interesting experience watching these kids play. There were some amazing bands. Some of them, there were some really big bands there. There was one that did, so they do it, the music is in grades, right? So grade 1 is like the simplest music. Grade 4 is typically kind of where most high school bands peak. Grade 5 gets into more college level, and grade 6 is later kind of college stuff, I guess. Like, I'm not 100% sure about how all that works. But I know like 5 and 6 are pretty advanced. And we had 2 bands grade 5 music and 1 band grade 6. They were huge. There was probably 80 kids on stage. I mean, that stage was packed. I could I could safely get 4 rows deep of chairs. They needed 5 plus percussion. I kind of had to spread the percussion out to the wings. We made it work though. But that grade 6, oh, man, they were awesome. That was a big band, and they played some really, really good music. Of course, it's more complex pieces that they play. Our band did superior. They got top scores and everything, as they have the last 5 or 6 years, maybe longer than that. They have a pretty good run going. The middle school did really well too. But what I was really impressed with, and I went up to the band director after they performed. There was one band that came that had maybe 20 kids, very, very small band. And I think they were grade 3 is what they played. But man, they sounded twice as big as what they were. Those kids could play some music, and they sounded awesome. And I went up to the director because he was real nervous too, that director. I think he said it was the first time he'd ever done this graded. It's not really a competition. It's more there's judges that adjudicate and grade the bands on their music performance, and it's kind of like a grade for the school or their music program. So anyway, I went up to him after. I said, "Man," I shook his hand. I said, "That was some awesome music." And there was one band. They had a flute player. This kid who was just incredible, and I went up to him and gave him props too after their performance. And I told him, I said, my daughter plays the flute, so I kind of clue into that. But he was really, really good flute player. So yeah, we had some amazing kids there, and some amazing bands and great music. But whew, man, I'm tired. So I see your comment there, Dad. Yeah, doing theater shows did serve a purpose. Hi, Roman, by the way. Predator. I'm not sure what that means. Yeah, I was thinking about that as I was like running on and off stage, and like being just behind the curtain, trying to keep the kids that were working for me, especially the 2 girls I had the last shift. All they would just going on and on, like shushing them the whole time. Like, they need to show some respect to the bands on stage. And I was but in my head was just Elaine yelling at us to shut up backstage. I mean, it was a little bit better on this stage because the curtains were thicker and a little less noise transmitted through those curtains. But yeah, moving props on and off stage. Although I didn't have to do any of it in the dark, thankfully. We had lights the whole time. But I got those kids moving, and I mean, I did plenty of work myself. My back is killing me now, moving all those props, or not props, the chairs and music stands. Oh, if I never see another big ass thing of music stands and chairs again, I'll be pretty happy. But I know I will. But anyway, so yeah, so we got a sort of failure but sort of success on the resin work. Hello, daughter. Getting some ice cream? What do you mean? There's vanilla ice cream. I just bought some. It's in the other freezer. Yeah, so it leaked a little bit, but I'll be able to fix that. I guess in retrospect, had I put a real thin coat in of just clear and kind of sealed some of it, and then the next day came and done the fill, that probably would have worked a little bit better. And maybe even done some caulking on the outside, or just overlap that seam better. But I'm going to mix up some more resin maybe tonight. I got to see if I have anything in the house that I can use. Because I was just at Dollar General too. I should have picked up some Solo cups. I didn't even think about it. But I'll find a container I can use, mix them clear up. When you cut it up, how you so to sand and polish it, I'll start with like a 60 or 80 grit, and then I will move up just like you would sanding wood. But with this, I'm going to get up to probably 800 grit. And then I'm going to try, I've never done it before, but I'm going to try using some hard wax oil that I purchased and see if that fills it in and seals it well. What am I sanding? Hey, welcome, Jack. The resin pour I did the other night. So when I cut this up into pieces for candles, that's what he was asking about. So I'll do that probably Saturday. If I can get this this resin poured tonight, then it'll be cured by Saturday. That's a thin pour. So yeah, so I'll do up to about 800 grit, and then try that hard wax oil on it and see if that fills in the little micro abrasions there. What I've done in the past sometimes is put a real thin coat of resin as a top coat, and then just pray that it actually levels out. It usually doesn't. If you do a real thin coat, even if you brush it on, it'll kind of like make its own little dips and stuff just because it's pretty thick liquid. But one thing I have found is taking something like one of these business cards and spreading that out real thin. So I might try that if the hard wax oil doesn't work. Made some coasters, need to sand, but haven't. Hey, well, no, not a wet sand. You don't have to do a wet sand. I just use my disc sander on that. I've watched people do polish on it. I don't know what they use for polish, and I've never done that myself. I have done like the board butter I make, so basically beeswax. Tried that. That's worked pretty well, but it does tend to wear off. But it will take that beeswax and that'll fill in some of it. Like I've done some cutting boards where I've done a resin infill on it, and then I just put the board butter on there. It works. It definitely fills in those gaps and makes it look like nice, pretty resin. But it will kind of wear out over time. But I'll see what happens with this and see if it works any better. I have high hopes for it, but we'll see. We shall see. In Iraq, okay. Well, welcome to the channel. Thank you for stopping by. Hopefully it's not too crazy where you're at right now. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for tonight. I just wanted to give an update on the resin. I said I'd jump on the live either tonight or tomorrow night, and I had a little bit of time tonight before I have to go to bed. And like I said, I'll get on Saturday and try to do the cutting, the sanding, drilling out the holes for the candles, and kind of see how it goes. And I think I might play with some of them, making planter boxes. Want to get resin out soon. Yeah. Oh man, I should do some planter boxes. I've got some ideas for some smaller ones. One of my neighbors wants one that I did last year. It looks like a bench. I think I got the idea from Jasco last year. Sold quite a few of them. I modified his design a little bit just to work for me. But one of my neighbors wants one of those, so I probably should have started getting those advertised weeks ago, but I didn't. But I've got some designs for some other ones, and I've got a couple fence pickets I want to tear down, and I might actually run them through the planer this time, just so I have to sand less. Only take off, like a 30-second, just to knock some of the roughness out of the boards. Resin it's pretty easy, but it's not forgiving. I mean, if you screw it up, you screwed up. That's it. Although I have recovered, I did one. I did for a while. I was doing welcome signs, so I got a 1x10 by 6 foot board. I used the CNC to carve out the letters welcome, and then usually for the O, the customers would want, so I've done a sunflower, I did a Batman symbol, I did dog paws were really popular, but different things, right? And so I'd carve that out in the CNC, fill it with resin, and then do a top coat of resin over the top of that, clear coat over the whole board. That's where I found that using a business card works really well to kind of spread that out a bit. And there was one I did where the color was wrong. I think I screwed up the dog paw or something like that. So I didn't want to go out and buy another board and then be upside down on that sale. So I ran it through the planer, and I was able to get it down enough. I took it down about 1/8 of an inch or so, because I only carve into it maybe 1/4 of an inch. So it was deep enough that I could throw it back on the CNC, recarve it, and it carved out the existing resin. Plus, as it's a V cut, so as I come down, it narrows what I had already filled with resin. So I ended up recarving everything, and it worked. But man, I hate doing rework like that, and it's not forgiving. If you screw up, you're pretty much chucking the piece. But if you're lucky, you can recover and redo what you did. But once you get the hang of it, it's not too bad. And then of course, engrave and fill with resin. Yeah, absolutely. I did a lot of board. I probably sold 20 or 30 of those. But as you can see, if you're not careful and you don't seal up gaps, like, because the thing with resin is it's really it's a thick liquid when you pour it, but since it's exothermic and it generates its own heat, it gets thinner for a while until it really starts to cure, and then of course it hardens up. And this stuff here, actually, can I still? Yeah, I've actually, my ratio was off a little bit. I can actually leave a thumbprint in it, almost a divot. It was a lot softer yesterday. Not too bad now, but it'll be hard enough. It's gonna hold its form. But that's the other thing with resin is that if you get the ratio wrong, then it's not going to harden properly. So you got to be really careful with that. So, with the CO2 laser, I haven't tried lasering resin. I don't think. I'm trying to think if I've ever done that. But yeah, Cedar Point, to answer your question, it does work really well. It does work really well to engrave, fill with resin and sand. Yeah, when it's right, it's rock hard. It's awesome. It's like the sailors on board the submarine that got to launch a torpedo at an Iranian ship. Rock hard. Yeah, but you can definitely upgrade to a laser dot, a CNC. Yeah, I mean, I started with the CNC. That was the first big piece of equipment I got, and I've used the crap out of that thing. And then eventually, like, I had a little laser, a little $200 like Chinese knockoff of a, can't think of the brand right now, Otour, or maybe that's the brand I had. Shoot, I can't remember, but it's a knockoff of a popular brand of diode laser, belt driven. And I used that for a while. It worked, but I really found its limitations quickly, and I wanted something I could actually cut with. So I did a lot of research and ended up going with a CO2 from Omtech, or Omtech, whatever you want to say. The Polar 350, which is a desktop one. It's worked great. I've had it for a few years now. Knock on wood. Where's my wood here? Knock on it. Haven't had to change out that tube yet. I'm really not looking forward to the when I have to do that, because they don't really have much of a supply of them, and it's hard to get that part. A lot of people have trouble with it, even when they do get it and are able to swap that out. But anyway, if I were to do it all over again, like, I'm glad I started with that cheap laser. I'm glad I started with a cheap CNC and eventually upgraded both pieces. But a CO2 laser will pay for itself a lot quicker than a diode laser will. If you want to cut pieces out and like make decorations and ornaments and things like that, it's a lot harder to do with a diode laser than it is with a CO2. CO2 is just faster, more powerful. And I'm glad I went with a middle grade laser that has paid for itself a couple times over at this point. And I've learned a lot with it. And the next one I get, I may stay with the same company. I may not. I'm doing research now because eventually I'm going to upgrade this thing and move on to something bigger and better that has more capacity. That's another thing too, is how much work do you think you're going to be doing on it and the bed size? This is 12 by 20, which works for almost everything I want to do, but I've got a customer right now, a repeat customer, who has a piece that's 16 by 36. I can do it, but I have to put a different lens on it and actually put the piece under the laser. It's going to be a whole thing. It's going to be a whole process. So it's going to get interesting to get that work done, but I can make it happen. Want to fill sign letters with resin? Yeah. Wow, 7 years. Holy crap. That's a good tube right there. That's awesome. Yeah, I don't run my laser any higher than about 55%. Every now and then I'll go a little bit higher, depending on what I'm doing, but 55 is kind of my limit. Most of the time I run about 35, 40% just to save that tube as much as possible. And that does most everything I want to do. So Cedar Point, if you want to fill the letters with resin, what I recommend doing, get a cheap piece of wood, cheap piece of pine, something like that, carve something, and then if you go to like Hobby Lobby or even Walmart now, I think has it, you can get it's going to be expensive by volume compared to if you bought a gallon of the stuff, but it's going to be cheaper to test it with than it would be to buy a gallon of resin. But you can get some of that craft resin and just there's enough there that you could probably do 2 or 3 signs or engravings or whatever, kind of get a feel for it. If you don't have a scale, I recommend getting something like this. Oh, you already have the tabletop deep pour resin. Okay, cool. Wow, 65%. Wow, good deal. So I normally do my resin. There's one brand that I get that I can do it by weight instead of by volume, which is way easier. Because I can put it on the scale, measure it to the gram, and get very, very precise with the mixing. And what I've done, I bought a set of, I had bought a set of silicone graduated cylinders. So I actually had the measurements on the side for volume. So I could pour, like, say, the resin in there and then pour the hardener into something else, get it in there and get most of it in there. Then I found, okay, that works, or I would mix the resin up in there. But what I found is it really works the best is just getting some like red Solo cups. Put it on there, tear it out, put your resin in there, however much you think you need, and just kind of eyeball it. Maybe go a little bit extra. See the weight on there. Put in, if it's a 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1 ratio, put in what you need of the hardener, and then just mix the crap out of it right in that red Solo cup. Add your color to it. I recommend powdered color, although craft paints work pretty well too. But something like this right here, your pigment powder, it's got a little bit of a sparkle to it. It's real pretty. But there's some really good colors. It doesn't take much of this stuff. You can put, like, I would take like a popsicle stick, kind of dip it in there and just get a little bit on there, drop it in, mix it up, and go, okay, well, maybe that's a little too translucent or transparent. Add a little bit more until it was what I thought would look good. And then mix that in there for a couple minutes. And then, if you don't care about over pouring, then just pour it right in there and just let it kind of go over a little bit, sand it down later. But the problem with that is it will seep into the pores of the wood. So you really have to sand down beyond just flat and really get down in there. So the other thing you can do is get on Amazon, and this is not it, this came from my CNC, but essentially some plastic pipettes. There's like these little bottles you can get with needle tips. And so what I would do is I would carefully pour into these little bottles some resin, throw a tip on there, and then just squeeze that in there. And a lot of times I would actually just fill from the solo cup most of the way, and then use the needle tip to finish it off and get it just to where it's right at the surface of the wood and not spill over. And it will dip down as it cures because it's going to seep into the pores of the wood a little bit. So I try to it's just, you just got to get a feel for it. If you add craft paint to it, it will thin the resin. So it makes it a lot easier to pour. That's one thing I've found. If you use a dry pigment like that, it'll stay as thick as it is when you mix the resin. But it just depends on the look that you're looking to get. So hey, what's up, Keith? So I have seen a lot of people will seal it first before pouring the resin. I don't usually do that, but it's not a bad idea. There was one time I did that because I knew I was going to do an over pour. So I did all that first. I over poured it. It did make it a little bit easier to sand it down afterwards, as far as like it not seeping into the top surface of the wood where the carving wasn't, and then adding color to that. But again, you'll just kind of get a feel for the way you want to do it. So I recommend, get some cheap pieces of wood, throw it on the CNC, carve out a monogram. That's probably actually something good to start with because it'll have some thick bits, it'll have some thin bits. You can get a feel for how it pours, and then sand it down and see what it looks like. If it looks like crap, just adjust the way you pour it so it doesn't overfill as much. Super important though is making sure that your piece is level when you're letting it cure. If it's not level, it will, like, it self-levels. It's a liquid, right? So you'll end up, I've done a couple carvings where I thought it was level and it wasn't. And so I had some letters that were like right up to the surface of the wood and other ones that had a bit of a dip to them. And then I had to run it through the planer to get it all the same and then sand the crap out of it. And it was a lot of extra work. So just making sure that your workpiece, wherever you set it to cure, is level. Super, super important. No, but I'm going to be using it on, what day is it today? Thursday? I'm going to be using it tomorrow, actually. Before my daughter goes home, I'm going to be doing Taco Tuesday on a Friday. Man, I said go home. Leave home. Go back to college. That's what I meant to say. I've been really kind of crazy busy the last few days and didn't get a chance to do that. So I will be doing that tomorrow. Actually, I'll probably shoot that on video. My kitchen's actually clean for once. I don't think my wife would be too upset. Do a little Maker's Murphy makes dinner video. Oh, it's 9 o'clock. Level is very important. Yeah, made some resin stuff. They were all 100% resin objects from mold. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, absolutely post some stuff. I used to have I bought a couple molds at Hobby Lobby. I had like a circle, a square, octagon, I think. So what I would do, and to make coasters. So anytime I did a resin pour, any leftover I had, I would pour it into one of those molds, And then if it wasn't enough to fill the mold, I would just build up different colors and have like a multicolored coaster. Pretty cool. It was just a way to, because trying to figure out the exact volume of what you need for a carving is crazy math, and nobody wants to do that. You kind of get a feel for it. I knew, like, when I did a welcome sign, to fill all the letters, I would need between 140 to 180 grams of resin. So 70 each of hardener and resin, because the stuff I was using is a 1-to-1 ratio. And so if I went a little bit on the high side and there was excess, I could pour it in there and not waste it. It's not money being thrown away. Then that's why I bought those molds. I did a multicolored set of dolphins one time. I think I gave those to somebody. I ended up painting them. That's another thing with resin, is it'll take spray paint pretty well. So especially if you sand it a little bit and give it a little bit of a rough edge, it will definitely take spray paint. You will get sharp edges on the top. It'll, because it's a liquid, right? So there will be a meniscus to it. So if you don't overfill, that's going to happen. And you can, I don't know if you can see, this is kind of like an extreme example here, but where I had, even though this leaked a little bit, this side didn't leak that much. Okay. And so it seeped into the wood. And when I peel away, actually I can peel the tape off this side. We'll see what it looks like on this edge. Hopefully it doesn't stick to the resin too much. We shall see. It's actually coming off clean. Yeah, so there we go. There's the side of it there. There is a sharp edge there. But again, you can sand it. Like, you can sand it just like wood. And so there is that meniscus there. That little lip, that little ramp or whatever. You can even take a knife and cut that if you don't want to sand it, right? Cut that sharp edge off. Or if you have a corner planer or something like that. Although it will dull the crap out of a knife pretty quick. Or blade. I got, I made my own mold. I made a mold to do my my dolphins. And I still have some of the latex or silicone mold making stuff. I don't know how much I have left, but I bought a bottle of it on Amazon. It's a 2-part mixture. So you mix it together, and then I poured it into a mold. Put the dolphins in there that I had, the wooden ones I carved with my CNC. Let it set over a couple days, and then pulled it out, and I was left with a mold I can use. So that's super easy to do. If you want to do like a square mold, or a shape that's recessed, so say you could put, do like the river charcuterie boards or something like that. That's probably a little bit more complicated to do, but it's definitely doable. You basically just have to have a piece that's bigger, or a box that's bigger to put your silicone in, and then set a board inside of it that's suspended enough that it won't touch the bottom, so you actually have some silicone underneath it. And then when you pull it out, now you have a void there. Make epoxy dolphins. I did. Here's one I did recently, because I had some leftover resin. I don't remember what I was doing, but a set of dolphins right here. So these were, what I did was I took my dolphins. I did a 3D scan of them with an app that I had, and made a 3D model of it, and then carved it on the CNC. And took that carving. I don't know. Do I still? Oh, I have that right here. So I carved it out of, looks like walnut. So this was the carving I did on the CNC. Did it in walnut. Put that in the silicone mold making stuff, and now I can make resin copies of it. So yeah, there we go. But yeah, that's my Dolphins right there when I was in the Navy. I actually sold a couple of those too. I did them on the 3D printer. I've done them on the CNC. Ooh, a resin 3D printer. Yeah, absolutely. That would work awesome. Yeah, because resin you can get way finer resolution than you can. I had a FDM printer. You know, it was a Ender 3, which is basically a what is it? It's the Russian one. Starts with a P. I can't remember now. But it's Prussia. There we go, Prussia. That's not Russian. I just think of Russia because it says Prussia, or Prusa. So Ender's kind of a knockoff of that. But that's what I had for a long time was an FDM printer. So I would do a lot of stuff, and mostly PLA. I got to do ABS. I built a piece for someone's tent that broke. I modeled it and then printed it in ABS. It worked. But anyway, I used to do that. I never built molds for it though to do resin infills. But that would be awesome with a resin printer. Print some stuff, gold leaf them, encase them in clear. That would be really cool. Yeah, that would be really, really cool. Give it a shot. See what happens. Just do something small and just see how it works. That would be awesome. Man, I wish I had a resin printer. I almost bought one. I haven't had a 3D printer in about 4 years now. Because mine, the hot end, decided to shit itself, and that was that. Oh, nice. Lid handles for boxes. Nice. Resin printed in gray and got some clear. Fair enough. Yeah. At work in the shipyard, we have all of the 3D printers. A lot of MakerBots. That's a very popular one, but a lot of FDM printers. There are a few resin printers, and I've got a couple pieces that I've had printed for me. Different things like show the students, like this is what this looks like, this tool that you're going to be using later on. And then they also have a metal printer now too. I haven't seen what's come out of that, but they got approval to print some valve, which is pretty cool. They have a plaster printer too. That's an interesting one, but that's for like making molds. Clear skulls, cool. I had one of my son's friends has a 3D printer, and like I love my Crocs, so he printed me with his printer some, what do they call them, giblets, whatever. But the little things you put on the holes in the Crocs, it's a bust of the Rock. So I have the Rock on my Crocs. Although I think my son stole them from me, and they're long gone. But that was pretty funny. Yeah, more ideas than time to make. I know what that's like. Trust me. Absolutely, I know what that's like. Speaking of which, another thing I'm going to do Saturday too is I finally figured out how I'm going to build the body for the camera. I'm going to build a camera this weekend and then start working on the big props. And I think I finally figured out how I'm going to do it. There's a local wood shop. He had poplar, 1x12 poplar, 4/4 at 12-foot lengths. So I think I'm going to use that to build most of the big prop because it'll be a lot lighter. And I may even do that to build the rip it down to make the Wright Brothers plane, because I can just paint that. But it's a nice light wood that should be sturdy enough to hold up everything I need it to do, and then kind of go from there. Ooh, but that's going to be so much fun. Build what? Oh, so for the marching band this upcoming season, I'm going to be building, well, one, I've got a camera prop that I'm building. I've got the electronics over in a box over here to make, with a button push, a flash. And so that's going to be, so what's going to happen is one of the kids is going to take a picture of the scene, and then when he does that, I have big picture frames that are going to be on the field on wheels, and we're going to get printed out some famous images, and the kids are going to like recreate those images on the field, and so they'll take the picture, and then I'm going to time it. I got to build a mechanism. It's going to be rolled up to let go. It'll unfurl. There'll be magnets along the side of the vinyl printout of the image, so it sticks to the frame as it unfurls, and there'll be a photograph on the field. So the theme, the name of the show is Pictures of Us. I think that's what it's called. But it's going to be, they're going to recreate famous images, and there's going to be, the music is going to be kind of in the theme of the picture. So the first one is going to be the image of the steel workers having lunch on a beam when they're building the RCA building in New York City. Very, very famous photograph. So that's one of the props I'm going to build, is a steel beam that's 12 feet wide, 8 feet tall. So it's going to have 2 verticals, 1 horizontal. The horizontal is going to be about 3 feet off the ground. And so the kids are going to sit, some of the kids are going to sit on that to recreate that picture. But I'm also going to set into where they sit down some steel plates, and maybe aluminum, maybe a couple different metals. I got to kind of play around with it, but the percussion is going to be able to use that as a drum set to do part of the percussion for the piece of music for that part. So I got to build steel beams out of wood. I got to do it to where it comes apart, though, because the trailer we have, the open trailer to actually move that, to move all our props, is, I think it's 12 feet long, if not shorter. I think it's exactly 12 feet long. So I figured out, I finally figured out how I want to, basically the horizontal piece is going to fit into notches essentially in the vertical pieces. Then I'm going to lock it in with bolts, and I'm going to have fake bolts that'll look like rivets up and down the vertical pieces, so you'll never be able to tell it's any different. So I'll probably use what are the carriage bolts? There we go, carriage bolts, because they're round and concave or whatever. And then I'll have wooden versions of the tips of those glued on to look like the rivets for the steel beams. But anyway, so that'll lock that in so it doesn't shift. And so that's one big prop. I've got the picture frames to build, and then I've got to build a stage. Although I'm going to reuse some props from last year to build the stage. That one's going to be for the Kiss. The sailor coming back from World War II found a nurse or somebody on the pier in New York City, kissed her. Very famous image. So they're going to recreate that, and he's going to do a big band piece for that. I told him to do Anchors Aweigh because I don't think he would have to pay for the rights for that, but I don't know what he's actually going to use for the music for that part. And then another image he wants to do is the Wright brothers' first flight. We're North Carolina. We're right near OBX. First flight. First Flight High School is where my kids are going to be on Saturday doing a performance. So doing the Wright brothers plane. I'm not going to build the entire plane. I'm going to do a good section of the fuselage, part of the wings. But what I want on there is the propellers. And the propellers I'm going to carve on my CNC. And I'm going to put a bearing in the center of the propellers, so they'll be on the plane, but then they can be removed. They'll actually be able to spin, but they'll be able to be removed, and the guard will be able to spin them like rifles. And then I'm going to have a couple other ones that we'll have set out. So that's another one of the images there. So I got to build a scale model of the Wright brothers plane, a steel gird, some steel beams, a stage, and these picture frames, and then the camera. So I'm going to start with the camera. I've got the electronics finally figured out. I've tested it. It works. The next thing I got to do, and actually, I forget who it was, Jack maybe, talked about using gold leaf. I need a good way to make a reflector for, I've got this clear globe I bought, but this is going to be the LED that flashes is going to be inside of here, facing into here. This is going to face the audience. The other part of the globe is going to be on here just to hold everything together. But to make it look like the flash from an old style camera. But I need something that reflects better than aluminum foil. Chrome paint. I thought about doing chrome paint. I don't know if it's reflective enough. ChatGPT recommend using Mylar from like an emergency blanket. Silverleaf, I think, might work. I don't know. I got to look and see what I can find that's as reflective as possible. I even use the shiny side of the aluminum. And like the effect is there. It's just I want it to be as reflective as possible to make sure I get as much of a flash. So, you know, during a daylight performance, you'll still be able to see that flash. But we'll see. That's something to figure out. That's the last step of the camera. I got to build the body of this thing. I mean, it's just a box, but it has like an accordion sort of piece where the lens is attached. That was the focus. And I'm just going to take some, I've got some 1x pieces of pine. And I'm going to cut down to the size of those squares. I'll do 45 bevels to make it look like the accordion bit. But I'm going to hollow out the inside of it, glue it all together, and that's where I'm going to stuff the electronics inside of that part of the camera and then the body, and then run a wire out to where the LED's at to work. Well, I want both. I want for looks, but from a distance, the material is less important for look than the effect. I want it to reflect as much light as possible because that LED is going to be facing the inside of the globe to try to reflect that and be a much wider flash, not a point source, but more of a plane source there, or I guess a spherical source, a larger point source, I guess, just to spread that light out as much as possible. I tested it in the daylight. I was about 200 feet away. I had my son hit the button and light it off. And it was definitely visible, but I want to spread that light out as much as possible. So anyway, that's a project I'll try to finish up on Saturday. At least get it built and then start working on painting it and doing some of the detail work to make it look like a camera. So, man, I didn't expect to be on this long tonight. I gotta go to bed. Thank you guys for hanging out and listening to me ramble on about all kinds of random stuff. Yeah, so Saturday, if you catch me Saturday, I'll be on at some point, probably. See, what do I have going on Saturday? Oh, my kids have their performance. Shoot. I don't know what time I need to be down there. So it'll probably be Saturday night. Saturday night, I'll cut up that block and turn it into excuse me. Oh, see, I'm really tired. Man, long days. Turn it into candle holders and kind of see how that turns out. And we'll see how this hard wax oil works on resin. Hopefully it does work. Yeah, so thanks for hanging out, and I will see you guys on the next one. And we'll make some candle holders and maybe a camera prop. Awesome. Thanks, guys. I will see you later. Go make something.